My wife wanted an open marriage. I refused, and she ended up cheating on me in our bedroom. Damn it, I should have seen it coming. With some foresight, it would have been obvious, like 2 trains on a collision course. But I wasn't paying attention. I could blame it on one train hiding in a tunnel, but all the warning signs were there. I was just too smitten with the girl to notice when the other train came roaring out. I was completely blindsided. Enough with the metaphors, let's get to the point. Throughout school, they were always there, but you didn't really notice them as 2 separate people. They were Mercedes Koff and Portia Rowan, known as the twins. They dressed, spoke, and styled their hair the same. They might as well have been joined at the hip, though they weren't related. They weren't standoffish. In their teens, they dated boys, but only double dated. If a guy liked one, he had to find a date for the other. I liked both, but never bothered with the double date game. It was too much hassle, and the girls were picky. The issue never arose for me because, at 16, my dad got me an apprenticeship with my Uncle Harry in London. Get an apprenticeship and you'll have a job for life, my dad said. So, I moved in with Uncle Harry and Auntie Mavis in the suburbs. Most of our work was there too, and I had one day and evening a week at technical college. Uncle Harry worked me hard, even on weekends, to make up for college days. My trips home dwindled from monthly to barely 3 times a year. By the end of my apprenticeship, home felt like a stranger's place. I'd saved enough money to rent a flat back in my hometown. Work was easy to find with my papers, and the pay was good. I started on a site with 50 new houses and then moved to a smaller job on a barn conversion. One day, while discussing plans over tea, I mentioned a large blank wall on the building. The boss handed me the artist's drawing and said, "Show me." I sketched the changes I thought would be improvements. Later, I was called to the site office where the boss, the owner, and the architect were. After some heated exchanges, my changes were added to the plan. On the day we handed over the house, the architect told me, "You should be an architect or designer. You have an eye for design." A few weeks later, I signed up for a part-time college course in architecture. I continued working on building sites to support my studies. One day, in the college library, I noticed a familiar-looking young woman. She smiled at me briefly before returning to her book. I stared at her, trying to place her face. She caught me staring, got up and walked over to me. She rotated my book and said, "You'll find it easier to read if it's the right way up, Roger." I looked up, surprised. "Mercedes, you've changed a lot. Is that a compliment?" "Of course. But where's Tish?" I asked. "She's in the States doing an internship." We were supposed to be there together, but my placement fell through. I decided to brush up on my Spanish here. We talked until the librarian shushed us, then moved to the refectory. By the time she had to go to class, we had made plans for the evening. I drove her home in my old van since I was doing some side work and needed it for my tools. When I pulled up outside her upscale house, I wondered what her parents thought. We sat in the van chatting about school until I asked her out for the next evening. Her reply hinted at something I missed at the time. "That would be nice, Roger. I haven't been out since Tish left." I arrived at her house at 7:30 that Friday. Her father opened the door, giving me a once-over like I was unwelcome. He looked at my van with obvious disdain. Inside, I met her mother and younger sister Estelle, who I remembered from school. They were pleasant, but her father clearly didn't like me. Typical protective father behavior, if you ask me. When Dee entered the room, my jaw dropped. I'd known her since she was a kid, and while I'd noticed her pleasant face and nice figure the day before, I was unprepared for the stunning woman who walked in that evening. It was like poetry in motion. I was speechless. That evening, we went to a local pub with live music and a dance floor. Although we danced a few times, we spent most of the night talking. I can't remember what we discussed, but we always seemed to agree on almost everything, except for Portia. I had no interest in her, but pretended to for Dee's sake as she clearly missed her lifelong companion. Our first date led to a second and third, and by the end of the month, Mercedes and I were inseparable. When not at college or working, we were together. Dee would wait by my van after evening classes and meet me for lunch. I was smitten with her, and she seemed to feel the same. Dee joined me in bed after 3 months together. She couldn't use the pill, so we used other protection, which sometimes spoiled the mood. Despite this, we found other ways to satisfy each other. Dee corresponded with Tish regularly, but I didn't realize how it affected our relationship. Dee's physical preferences changed over time. Initially, she wanted nothing to do with mouth loving, but by February she was eager to try it and soon became enthusiastic. We started talking seriously about getting engaged and married. I bought her a ring in late July, and we planned to marry after her finals the following summer. Dee's mother was thrilled, but her father thought she could do better than a builder. Estelle, Dee's sister, bluntly suggested I should marry her instead. In early August, Portia returned from the States with her American boyfriend, George Greenlake. I didn't like him. He was brash and a know-it-all. One evening I came home to find Dee in my flat looking distressed. There were 3 coffee cups on the table. When I told her I'd change quickly so we could go out, she blurted out, "You can't go in there yet. Tish and George are using our bed." Like hell they are. An apt statement from me. Actually, I believe in the saying that an Englishman's home is his castle, and the most personal item in my home is my bed. This likely stems from returning to my parents' house from Uncle Harry's to find a lodger sleeping in my bed. I think they heard my outburst because Portia and George entered the kitchen a couple of minutes later still getting dressed. Despite their apologies, they didn't change the sheets or make the bed. Dee assured me they hadn't asked her permission. From their behavior, I believed her. They acted as if they were the most important people in the world. While George was in the country, the 4 of us hung out. Portia borrowed her father's car most of the time, as my van only had 3 seats in the front. I refused to ride in her father's car because George drove. Once they were away from her house, Dee always rode with me. One evening, I watched with sick amusement as George drove out of a pub car park straight into a bus. I honked my horn, which helped the bus driver stop before too much damage was done. George had driven on the wrong side of the road, a common mistake for foreigners. George wasn't insured to drive and didn't have an international license, though the police accepted his American one after Portia's father arrived. I took Dee home. George flew back home the next weekend. September arrived quickly. My old van became crucial for moving Tish and Dee's gear to their flat at university. Suddenly, Portia was happy to travel in my van. Once her stuff was loaded, after her father discovered his new Saab had been wrecked, he didn't volunteer to drive her. Soon the girls were gone. I missed Dee, though not Tish. Despite dating Dee for a while, I'd only been invited to her house for a meal once, mainly to ask her father for her hand in marriage. The week after the girls left, Dee's mother invited me to Sunday lunch. I got along well with Dee's mother and sister, who still followed me like a puppy. Dee's father even started calling me son and invited me to golf, a sport I'd have to take up after marrying Dee to keep the in-laws happy. I suspected an ulterior motive in these invitations. When Dee came home monthly to visit, we spent a lot of time at her parents' house. I was now a regular and welcome visitor. Most weekends, Tish joined us, talking about George and her plans to marry him after graduation. Tish often came home with Dee, spending most of her time wherever Dee was, including my flat. By Christmas, wedding plans were in full swing. Dee's mother and Estelle were organizing everything, with Dee and me agreeing to their plans. Dee's father was footing the bill. I'd ask, "Are you all right with this, Frank?" He'd nod and say, "Wait till it's your turn, son, only have boys." He wasn't a bad guy. Estelle saw our marriage as a rehearsal for her own big one. Frank would raise his eyebrows whenever she said that. Everything was going great until just after Easter, when Portia got dumped by George. He left her for another girl, confirming he was an insensitive idiot. Portia wasn't my favorite person, but I saw that letter, and it was brutal. A few weeks later, Dee suggested postponing our wedding because Tish was upset. The girls graduated and moved back home, and both quickly found jobs at local banks. I continued juggling college and work, often working alone or with a few employees. Initially, I saw Dee almost daily, but she started going out with Tish more often. Eventually, 3 nights a week, Dee stopped meeting me after my night classes. We postponed our wedding to after Christmas, then to Easter. I was patient, but it seemed we had to wait until Tish found a new boyfriend before Dee would marry me. In early December, I went to pick Dee up around 7:30, but she and Tish weren't home and hadn't called. I found her car at a pub on the outskirts of town. Inside, Dee and Tish were with some guy, engrossed in his nonsense. I sat across the room and watched them eat and chat, noting Dee was drinking non-alcoholic drinks. When they left around 9, Dee spotted my van. She came back inside looking for me. "Roger, how long have you been here?" she asked. "Since about 8. My fiancé stood me up so I had a quiet drink," I said. "Why didn't you join us?" she asked. "You didn't want me along, did you? If you had, you would have called. Was it a fancy menage a trois or something?" I replied. "How can you say that? Rodney invited Tish and she didn't want to go alone," Dee said defensively. "Why no call to me or your mother?" I demanded. "I forgot," she said. "Well, I forgot to tell you I was here. Now drive your friends home and drop the idiot off first." "I don't trust him," I instructed. "Who are you calling an idiot?" he demanded. You slimy git," I retorted. He bragged all night about being tough, but when we took it outside, he ran away after trying to slam the door in my face. "Did you have to do that?" "Tish liked him," Dee demanded. "I didn't do anything. He talked himself into a corner in a fight, then ran. I just went out for a drink after getting stood up. Good night," I said. I returned to the bar to finish my drink. Dee came back inside for a minute to whisper with Tish, then they left. The next evening, I didn't pick Dee up as usual. She let herself into my flat around. "Why didn't you pick me up? We were supposed to see that film," she asked. "Oh, I forgot," I replied. "Don't talk rubbish. This is about last night, isn't it?" she accused. "It's about us and your friendship with Tish," I clarified. "What does Tish have to do with it?" she asked, confused. "Everything. If she weren't around, we'd be married by now, but you've postponed our wedding because Tish hasn't found someone. I'm not waiting anymore. The wedding is in February, or it's off, and you'll see Tish only 2 nights a week. The evenings I'm at college," I stated firmly. "You can't make demands like that," she protested. "I can. I'm supposed to be the guy you want to marry, but you worry more about Tish. Think about what you really want, and tell me tomorrow night. If you're not here by 9, it's over. You can keep or sell the ring," I concluded. Dee tried to change my mind, but I was done waiting. When I got home from work, Dee's house was calling nonstop. I ignored it. At 9, I left and went to a friend's flat to watch mine. Dee arrived with Tish and the guy from the pub. She searched my flat, found it empty, and then they all left. Dee returned alone later. My friend suggested I talk to Dee, but I felt she had made her choice. Around midnight, Dee came back with Tish. Neither of them left by morning, and I couldn't leave my friend's flat without being seen. I wanted them to wonder where I was. They were likely waiting me out, knowing I'd need my van. I called a guy who worked for me and had him drive my van to the site. The girls chased the van, thinking I was driving. Then I got into my car, which Dee didn't know about. I drove to a house I'd bought for our married life, still under construction. Every time the wedding date was pushed back, the work on the house was delayed. I stayed at the house overnight. The next day was a college day, and I couldn't miss it. Despite the progress on my building projects and the good income, I still aimed to become an architect. Having the car that Dee didn't know about saved me that day. I saw both girls at college but avoided them. If Dee had been alone, I might have spoken to her, but Portia's presence deterred me. That evening, I called the flat. Brian had told me that Portia had left Dee alone. "Roger, where are you?" Dee asked. "That's none of your business," I replied. "Roger, I'm sorry, but I couldn't let Portia go to that concert alone." But she wasn't alone. She had that guy with her. Or was he with you? "He's Tish's boyfriend, you know that. I'm your girl. You were not anymore." "Did you tell your mother to confirm the February wedding date?" "No, I didn't. You were acting so strange." "You're the one acting strange. Last night was your chance to choose between Portia and me. You chose her. It's over. The engagement and wedding are off. Goodbye, and please leave the flat tidy. I don't live there anymore, as you've probably noticed." "Where are you living, Roger?" "In the house I bought for our wedding. But you chose not to live here with me. Goodbye, Dee." I hung up. The next evening, Dee's parents visited me. They knew about the house since I discussed almost everything with them. Although my relationship with Dee's father was always tenuous, they kept my secrets about the car and house. They understood my position and hoped Dee's affection for me would separate her from Portia. That didn't happen. It was a sad parting, and they wished me well. They never told Dee about the house or their visit. They believed Dee would always be under Portia's influence. Dee tried to talk to me over the next few months, but was always with Portia. I refused to speak to her in Portia's presence. Dee still told people we were engaged, which caused problems. I was trying to move on and started dating other girls, though not very successfully. One girl who wanted a serious relationship overheard Dee claiming we were still engaged. This led to a confrontation. After that, I never heard any more claims from Dee about our engagement. Time passed, and at the end of that college year, I abandoned my dream of becoming an architect. Officially, it was because my building business had taken off, which was true. I had built a reputation for quality work. However, the real reason was that Dee had enrolled in a design course. I needed seeing her name on the list made me decide not to register. Instead, I focused on my growing business and quickly became one of the most respected small builders in town. I didn't see much of Dee or Portia. Estelle visited occasionally, hinting she could replace Dee in my life. While I liked her, I knew it wouldn't work because I'd always be running into Dee. Nearly 2 years after breaking up with Dee, I reconnected with Shirley, an old school friend. Shirley was fun to be around, and we quickly fell in love. 8 months later, we married in a small ceremony. Soon after, Shirley was diagnosed with cancer. It went into remission after chemotherapy, but we always feared its return. Over the next 5 years, I focused on Shirley and my business. Despite her illness, Shirley gave me 2 wonderful daughters. In our 5th year, Shirley's cancer returned aggressively, and chemo was ineffective. She chose to stop treatment and spent 3 more years with us before passing away. Our daughters, 6 and 7, supported me through the funeral and wake. Shirley had prepared them well. My company had done renovation work for Shirley's church, including rebuilding a wall and reserving a grave plot near the church's main door for her. Although not religious, I wanted Shirley's grave to be in a lively spot. One day, I'll join her there. At the house after the funeral, I was surprised to see Dee's father, Frank, and Estelle. They offered their condolences and explained that Dee's mother was ill in the hospital, which is why she couldn't attend. A few days later, I visited her in the same ward Shirley had been in. Although she was recovering, I never learned what her illness was. Catherine, as she insisted I call her, asked me to bring my daughters to see her when she got home. Apparently, she had spoken with Shirley often during her last days. Catherine told me that Dee was no longer living at home, so there was no risk of running into her. 3 weeks later, I took my daughters to meet Catherine and Frank, who became like grandparents to them. Estelle frequently visited, and my neighbors thought we were involved until her boyfriend Russell started coming over too. He was eager to marry Estelle, but she kept him waiting, similar to how Dee had treated me. Estelle and Russell helped a lot with the girls, making me reconsider hiring a nanny. One day, Russell expressed frustration about Estelle not committing to marriage. I advised Estelle to seize the opportunity with Russell, unlike what had happened with Dee and me. Her cryptic response was, "You really don't know, do you?" Eventually, Estelle agreed to marry Russell and asked me to be the best man. I agreed, knowing Dee would be at the wedding but not wanting to stress Estelle. On a sunny June day, I stood with Russell at the altar while my daughters were bridesmaids. During the service, there was a commotion as Portia and George arrived late, causing Estelle to mutter "crap," which the congregation heard due to her microphone. The service continued smoothly. Afterward, as we exited the church, Catherine turned to me and said, "We never thought they'd have the cheek to turn up. We thought we were safe sending them an invite since they live in America." As we approached the back of the church, I saw Dee sitting with a couple of other women. She looked unhappy, and her presence surprised Catherine, causing her to falter briefly before continuing with a smile and nod to Dee. And I avoided eye contact. It was clear something had happened within the family that I wasn't aware of. Outside, during the obligatory photo session, I noticed Dee wasn't in the lineup. Estelle tried to motion her over, but Dee didn't move. Estelle then gestured to me. Understanding her unspoken request, I slipped away, circled behind Dee, and took her by the arm, guiding her into the lineup. "Smile, this is your sister's wedding," I whispered firmly. "What do I have to smile about?" Dee replied. "A lot more than my wife had." "That was her grave you almost stood on back there," I reminded her. Dee apologized, and I reminded her that she had reasons to be grateful. One of the ushers handed me a small bouquet, which I gave to Dee before returning to my place. Dee managed to smile, though she still looked unhappy. After the photos, I began herding people into the limousines for the reception. My daughters demanded hugs and praise for their behavior. I noticed their bouquets were missing, likely handed off to Dee. She had disappeared back into the crowd, which was a relief. Portia came up to say hello, but I wasn't interested in her or George's story. Before leaving, I visited Shirley's grave. There were now 3 small bouquets alongside the large one I had placed earlier. I spoke to Shirley as I always did, even though I don't believe in the afterlife. It's funny how we do that, isn't it? Talking to loved ones as if they can hear us. At the hotel reception, it was clear Dee's presence was unexpected. After Catherine left the welcoming line, she scrambled to rearrange the seating at the top table to include Dee. I helped but didn't ask about the family situation. After the meal and speeches, I thought I could relax. Being a best man involves more than you think, and I wasn't prepared for Russell's speech. He announced Estelle had a crush on me for years, and thanked me for convincing her to marry him instead. In my speech, I mentioned knowing Russell for only a few months, but assured everyone, based on my daughter's approval, that he was a good match for Estelle. Once the speeches were over, the dancing began. Estelle and Russell started, followed by the parents, then me with the bridesmaids. Moran and I danced with my daughters, making it a fun foursome. Estelle and Russell joined us, creating a unique waltz. Dee sat with her friends away from the family table. Later, Estelle asked me to dance, and I took the chance to inquire about Dee. "Not now, Roger. Meet me in reception in 10 minutes, and I'll explain. Someone might overhear us here." After our dance, I saw Estelle speak with Russell, who nodded. She then headed to the ladies' room, which had another door to the foyer, so I met her there. We sat in a corner, and she began to explain. "When you and Dee broke up, Mom and Dad were furious with her. They were always worried about her relationship with Portia, not because they thought it was physical, but because of Portia's influence. They were thrilled when you came along, but Frank wasn't too keen on me. Dad actually thought you were amazing, but played the proud father role. He didn't want to scare you off by being too enthusiastic. He's the one who always praised your building skills. When Dee started postponing the wedding, we all warned her she'd lose you. When you called it off, it was because of Dee and Portia. Portia kept telling Dee she could do better and to make you wait. Dee couldn't see how Portia was using her, Why did you invite Portia to your wedding? We had to. Her father is a business partner of Dad's. We didn't think they'd actually show up. What happened with Dee and the family? A year after you broke up with Dee, George asked Portia to marry him, and they moved to the States. Dee was dumped and realized how Portia used her. She lost the only man she loved for a friend who left her. Dee had a breakdown after that. She believed you'd come back to her, but your marriage to Shirley shattered that. She blamed the family and had to go to a clinic afterward. She moved to London, feeling too guilty to face us and not wanting to run into you and Shirley. We cut you off to avoid slipping up and saying something too. We rarely saw her. When Mom met Shirley in the hospital, they talked a lot. Shirley asked Mom to look after you and the girls, Estelle explained. Why was your mom so surprised to see Dee today? I asked. Dee came down for my bachelorette party and looked better than she had in years. We were getting along until someone mentioned you were the best man. Dee said she couldn't attend if you were here, so we assumed she wasn't coming. Mom rearranged the seating to cover for her absence, Estelle replied. But you only had to say, and I would have stepped aside, I said. We know, Roger. You're a wonderful person, but we couldn't disappoint the girls. They were so excited to be my bridesmaids. Weren't they amazing? Estelle asked. Yes, I was very proud of them. Their mother would have. Been proud too, I said. I'm sure she would have. I wish I could have known her. From what Mom says, she was a brave woman and lucky to have you, Estelle said warmly. Anyway, the girls must have convinced Dee. They worked on her all yesterday. Now I need a favor. You can say no, Estelle said hesitantly. On your wedding day, I couldn't refuse you anything. What's the favor? I asked. I want you to dance with Dee. Russell has danced with her, but she won't join the family table, partly because you and the girls are there. She won't refuse you. Thanks for getting her in the photos, by the way, Estelle requested. I'll do anything for you, but what if Dee won't dance or makes a scene? I asked, concerned. Russell and I have a plan. He'll ask Dee to dance when we go back in, and you'll dance with me. We'll accidentally bump into each other and switch partners. Dee won't refuse once you're dancing with her. After the song, bring her to the family table. I'm sure she won't leave once she's there, Estelle explained. Are you sure this is a good idea, Estelle? I asked, uncertain. Honestly, I don't know, but Dee needs to see that we don't hold a grudge, and hopefully you don't either. Things were going well at my hen party until you were mentioned. I'm hoping your presence will help, Estelle admitted. All right, let's do it. Lead the way, I agreed. Oh, Roger, don't be like that, Estelle said with a laugh. I'm just teasing you, I responded with a smile. By the way, Mom's coming to see you tomorrow morning. She has something for you. You'll be in, right? Estelle asked. Yes, the girls are so excited they'll probably be up all night, I assured her. Estelle took my arm and we headed back into the hall. The band started playing a waltz and we joined the dancers. I saw Russell guiding Dee toward us. The slight bump and quick partner switch caught Dee off guard. She stiffened when she realized she was dancing with me. Come on, Dee, relax, I urged gently. She did relax, almost too much, leaning heavily against me. As the waltz ended, I half-carried her to a chair by her mother. Frank sat on her other side while I joined my daughters. The band was loud, so I couldn't hear their conversation, but it was good to see Dee talking to her parents. Around 11, I decided to take my girls home. It was past their bedtime, and they'd had a long day. Estelle and her mother kissed us goodnight, and my girls, though they kissed Dee too, didn't seem to recognize her. The next morning, we woke up late. The girls were up before me, eager to swim. They wouldn't go into the pool without an adult, a rule Shirley had instilled. Just before noon, Catherine and Frank arrived. We greeted them, and it was clear my girls had bonded with them. My parents favored my brother's kids, and Shirley's parents lived far away, so the girls hadn't bonded with them as much. After everyone settled with cold drinks, Catherine asked to speak privately. Frank stayed with the girls. I led Catherine to the lounge where we could still see the kids and Frank playing. Catherine handed me an envelope from her bag. Shirley asked me to give this to you 6 months after anyway. She wrote some herself and dictated the rest to me when she got too weak. I took the envelope and began to open it. I'll go outside while you read it. If you need to talk, I'm here. I unfolded the letter, written partly in Shirley's deteriorating handwriting and partly in Catherine's neat script. Hey, lover boy, the letter began. How are you and our girls getting along without me? By the time you read this, I'll have been gone for 6 months. I asked Kathy to hold on to it for that long before giving it to you. This is very hard for me to write. I'm not sure what I want to say or how to say it. Please forgive me if it doesn't come out right. Roger, I feel guilty, not just for leaving you, but also for marrying you in the first place and bringing all my problems into your life. We'd only been dating a couple of weeks when the doctor gave me the news. It took me some time to decide whether to tell you or not. I was scared you'd stay with me out of a twisted sense of duty. You know you're that kind of man, but I must tell you, I loved you, and I know you loved me for who I was. When you encouraged me to have the girls, even though you knew you'd likely raise them alone, I knew it wasn't pity but real love. I'm sorry I can never repay you for all the love you've shown me. Roger, I have loved you more than any man I've ever known. I know you don't believe in an afterlife, but I hope one day you'll be proven wrong and we'll meet again there. That's the worst part over with. Now, I need you to think about the rest of your life and our girls' lives. I have a big favor to ask. Please find another mother for our girls. They will need a mother as they grow older, and you will need a companion. Having met Catherine, I think I know the best candidate, and I think you know too. Catherine has told me a lot about Mercedes and you and what happened between you two. From what Sia's told me, I'm sure Mercedes did, and still does, love you. She was under that horrible girl's influence. I know it's not nice to say, but that worked out in my favor, even though I know it upset you at the time. They say the Lord moves in mysterious ways. Please consider finding Mercedes again. Show her the compassion and love you've shown me in the last few years. Hopefully she will love you and my girls as much as I do. Roger, I know she loves you. At this point, the letter changed to Catherine's handwriting. Catherine and Frank have become good friends of mine since I've been in the hospital this time. I've also gotten to know Estelle, who visited me the other day. Estelle loves you too. God, you are a lucky man. All these people whose lives you've touched love you. Kathy assures me she will keep a friendly eye on you and our girls. You know they don't have any grandchildren yet, and they assure me they will treat our girls as if they are their own. Please let them do that no matter what happens. Kathy has been a good friend to me during these long, lonely nights. Anyway, if all goes well and you do as I hope, Catherine and Frank will be the girls' real grandparents. I can't think of anything else to say. Thank you, Roger, for loving me, and remember, if I can, I will always watch over you and the girls from wherever I am. Goodbye, my love, till we meet again. Shirley. The signature, with 8 crosses under it, one for each year we were together, was in Shirley's shaky hand. I sat and cried for I don't know how long before Catherine came back into the lounge with a cup of tea for me. I can only assume she'd been watching me read the letter through the lounge window. I suddenly realized I couldn't hear the girls playing in the garden anymore. I must have looked around in panic. It's all right, Frank took them out for ice cream. It's warm enough for swimsuits today, Catherine said reassuringly. Thanks, Catherine. You know what's in this letter, don't you? I asked. Yes, but you don't have to follow Shirley's suggestions about Mercedes. The letter is private and I'll keep it confidential, Catherine replied. Thank you, Kathy. What do you think of Shirley's ideas? I inquired. I won't advise you, Roger. I'm Mercedes' mother, so I'm biased. It's your decision, but you should get to know Mercedes again before deciding, Catherine responded cautiously. Dee might not want to marry me anymore. It's been years, I said, expressing my concern. I'm trying not to influence you, but Dee said yesterday how lovely your girls are and wish they were hers, implying she regrets not marrying you, Catherine shared. I understand. I still have strong feelings for Dee. Leaving her was the hardest thing I've ever done. I had to force myself to be angry with her. I'm not sure I can let go of those feelings, I confessed. Are you going to try? Catherine asked softly. Of course, it was Shirley's last request, but I need to know Dee socially again and see how the girls get along with her before considering a relationship, I explained. You're right, the children must come first, Catherine agreed. Yes, we need to see if they connect with Dee naturally, I said, emphasizing the importance of the children's feelings. Exactly, we can't let them feel someone is replacing Shirley. It would be a disaster. I don't want to hurt Dee again if the children aren't happy. I couldn't do that to her, Catherine added thoughtfully. Catherine kissed my forehead. Shirley knew you well. She always said you were the most thoughtful person she knew, she said with affection. I blushed. How are we going to get the girls together with Dee? I asked, trying to change the subject. They mentioned missing your old pool parties. Why not have one in a couple of weeks? Dee is coming down for a family get-together after Estelle and Russell return from their honeymoon. It's meant to rebuild family connections. If you host a pool party, Frank and I can help with the cooking. Dee would come without knowing and might stay even if she's embarrassed. You'd be busy with guests, and Estelle and Russell could entertain the kids. We'll see how Dee interacts with them, Catherine suggested. Sounds good. The girls have mentioned pool parties, but without Shirley, it feels different. She was the heart of every party, I admitted. Shirley would love the idea. Remember, she wanted you to find another mother for the girls, Catherine reminded me. 2 weeks later, I woke up to hear my daughters talking to someone downstairs. Dragging myself out of bed, I found Estelle and Russell unloading a car full of goodies. It was then I realized how much effort Shirley had put into these pool dues, as she called them. They had brought many things I had overlooked, things I'd never had to think about before. Estelle later told me that Catherine had been given a list of forgotten items by my girls when she called the previous evening. I wondered why the girls hadn't pointed out my oversights. When I asked, they said, "I would be too busy. The lawns need to be mown before any guests arrive. Do as you're told, Roger, and don't ask questions." I thought I told you Shirley had trained them, and me well. Just after lunch, some guys who worked for me started to arrive with their wives and girlfriends, as did some neighbors with their children. Catherine and Frank arrived around 1:30 with a very quiet Dee in tow. She seemed embarrassed to see me at first, but soon was playing with Estelle and the kids in the pool. I think she was wearing one of Estelle's swimsuits. It looked familiar. I spent most of the day mingling, often with Russell as company. I think I heard almost every detail of their honeymoon, except for the private stuff. I speculate they didn't get out of bed for the first 2 days because Russell didn't mention those. It's funny how sometimes what people don't say is the most telling. Around in the evening, I thought it was time for the kids to go to bed. Russell nudged me as Dee went up with Estelle to settle them down. Half an hour later, when the two sisters came back down, I went up to kiss my girls goodnight. "Is that really her, Daddy?" my oldest asked as soon as I got to their bedroom. "Who are you talking about?" I asked. "Is she going to be our new mother?" the younger one explained. "Hold on, where did you two get the idea that there is going to be a new mommy?" I asked, puzzled. "Don't be silly, Daddy. Mommy told us a long time ago that you'd find another mother for us," my oldest replied confidently. "Oh, she did she? And what else did your mommy tell you that she didn't tell me?" I inquired. "She said that Estelle's sister would probably be our new mother. We were to help you catch her," the younger one added. "Catch her? What did she mean by that?" I asked, intrigued. "Mommy said Dee got away the first time, and if you got friendly with her again, we should help you catch her," my oldest explained. "Oh God, Shirley, you've really set me up, haven't you?" I muttered to myself. "Sorry, Daddy, I couldn't hear what you said," my youngest said. "Oh, nothing, girls. I was just offering a prayer to your mother. Now give me a kiss goodnight and we'll talk about things tomorrow," I said, trying to stay composed. "Is Dee coming over again?" "We like her," my youngest asked. "I don't know, baby, she might," I replied. "Well, if she doesn't come over, can we visit her?" my oldest asked hopefully. There comes a time in everyone's life when you have to admit you're on a losing wicket and throw in the towel. I figured this was my time. "Okay, girls, if Dee doesn't come to see us tomorrow, we will go see her. Now, will you both please go to sleep?" I said, giving in. "Good night, Daddy," they said in unison. I'm damn sure I heard them giggle as I left the room. When I got to the stairs, I sat down on the top step. I could hear the party going on outside and someone doing something in the kitchen. For a little while, I needed some time alone to think about what my girls had said. "Bugger, don't talk rubbish, you bleeding idiot. You've got to think about everything. Since Shirley passed on, you've been drifting along without much thought about anything," a little voice in my head seemed to say. It was obvious my girls liked Dee from the moment they saw her. I remembered how they looked at her at Estelle's wedding. The question was, did I still like Dee? What a stupid question to ask myself. Like her, I loved her. Well, I did once, didn't I? Although I pushed Dee away because I didn't want to share her affections with Tish. Well, Tish isn't in the equation anymore, but my girls are. Yeah, I think I could see myself sharing my girls with Dee. Hey, how did that question get turned around? And if I think back, what was it Shirley had said to me more than once? "Half of you is enough for me, Roger." What did Shirley mean by that? Had I never given Shirley all my love? Did she know there was a place in my heart for Dee? Damn, that woman could read me like a book. Bugger, why does life have to be so complicated? Wouldn't it be nice to be one of those people who see everything in black and white? I have so many different thoughts at once. Right, Roger, let's think this out logically. Do you love Dee? Yes, I'm sure I do. Do the girls love Dee? They've just met her, but they certainly seem to like her. There isn't much to dislike about Dee, but they can't love her yet. They have only just met her, but they do seem prepared to accept Dee as a surrogate mother without question. Now, does Dee like the girls? From what I saw by the pool, she's really taken with them. No, I don't think that was an act. Dee's mind doesn't work that way. No, Dee was having a great time with my girls. I could see them bonding quickly. Now, the big one, does Dee still love you? Well, there's only one way. To find out, you silly sod, go and ask her. Back outside, most of the remaining guests were sitting in a big circle on the patio by the pool. Russell was making sure everyone's drinks were topped off while Frank was still scrubbing down the barbecue. I think Frank was a more conscientious cook than I ever was. As I approached the circle of chairs, Catherine got up and came towards me. Mercedes, Estelle, and Estelle are in the kitchen doing some of the washing up. This might be a good time for you to talk to Mercedes alone while she's busy at the sink. Don't worry, Estelle will make herself scarce when you get in there, Catherine suggested. Between you and my two girls, you're planning to get Dee and me married off pretty quickly, aren't you? I asked with a hint of amusement. Roger, I can assure you none of us have said anything to Mercedes about you two getting back together, but I'm afraid the girls were asking her some embarrassing questions earlier. We weren't expecting that, Catherine admitted. So, I gather. I think Shirley had been planning this for a long time. I just wish she'd let me in on it. Tell me, Catherine, how long did you know Shirley? You didn't just meet her on her last day in the hospital, did you? I probed. Well, no, Roger. We met at the cancer support group. Didn't you know? Catherine revealed. No, Shirley never talked about what went on there. So, she was planning this reconciliation between Dee and me for some time then? I asked, feeling a mix of surprise and realization. To be honest, Roger, I don't really know when she found out who I was. Shirley asked me about you and Dee. I told her the truth as I saw it, but she did say to me more than once that if you two got back together, she wouldn't have to worry about you and the girls, Catherine explained. Damn it, I know for sure now that Shirley knew me far better than I know myself, I said with a sigh. Woman's intuition, Roger. You chose a wonderful wife in Shirley. Now why don't you go have a quiet word with Mercedes? Catherine encouraged. I went into the kitchen where Dee was washing and Estelle was drying. I took the drying cloth from Estelle before Dee realized I had entered the room. For a few minutes, Dee kept washing and placing things on the draining board, and I dried them. Then she suddenly stopped. She must have seen my arm taking the plate she just put down. She turned and looked at me. Long time since we've done this together, Dee, I said. Dee didn't reply. She just looked at me. I placed the plate in the rack and held out my hand for the next one. Dee passed me the dirty plate she was about to wash. Shouldn't it go in the water first? I asked with a smile. Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking, she said as she took the plate back and started to wash it. I'd say you were thinking, but not about the washing up, Dee. Tell me, what were you thinking? I asked gently. Do you really want to know? She asked, her voice trembling. I wouldn't ask if I didn't want to know, I replied sincerely. I was thinking what a bloody idiot I am, she confessed. And why is that? I asked, my heart pounding. Well, I had the chance to spend the rest of my life with you, and I threw it away. How could I have been that stupid? Dee said, her eyes filling with tears. Maybe you weren't stupid, Dee. My wife Shirley was a believer, not that I've ever been, but she always did say the Lord moves in mysterious ways. Perhaps if he does exist, and I'm not saying he does, he had a job for me to do before we got married. Now I think that job is over, and there's a job for you to do now, I said, trying to find the right words. And what's that? Dee asked, looking confused. Well, there are two little girls upstairs who are missing a mother. They seem to think you were the chosen one, I said softly. Dee looked at me with a confused look. Let's put it this way. They had some nice new dresses they wore as Estelle's bridesmaids, and now they want to wear more as your bridesmaids, I explained. Roger, are you asking me to marry you? Dee asked, stunned. Well, no, I don't have to ask you that question. I asked you that question years ago. I'm still waiting for you to name the bloody day, I said, trying to lighten the mood. Wrong thing to say. 2 plates got broken. The one Dee was washing when she dropped it as she almost fainted, and the one I dropped as I went to catch Dee before she fell. The sound of the plates breaking brought Catherine and Estelle into the kitchen from the hall, followed by 2 little girls who should have been in bed. I had a nasty suspicion they were all eavesdropping out there, and Frank came running in the back door from the garden. The scene they walked into was me holding Dee in my arms. Catherine and Estelle started crying. My girls, who had big grins on their faces, couldn't understand why they were doing that, nor could they understand why their daddy and Dee had started crying either. I thought you two were in bed asleep, I managed to say to them once I got my emotions under control. Come on, I'll take you back up, I offered. No, Roger, I'll do it. I've got to get used to looking after them, Dee said as she extracted herself from my embrace. Come on, girls, we've got lots to talk about, she added, taking their hands. Catherine worked miracles, and a month later it was our wedding day. Russell and I got to the church early, and I asked him to wait while I had a word with Shirley. I walked over to her grave alone. Well, girl, you set me up good and proper, didn't you? Now, this was your idea, so I don't want you getting upset with me over it. I think you're right, though. Dee will make a great mother for the girls. Look, Shirley, you do realize what you've done here? Dee is going to want some children of her own sometime, so don't you dare hold it against me when we get all cozy with each other. Well, I'd better go now, but I'll be back with the girls in a couple of weeks. Dee and I are going away tomorrow for a week or so, but I'll tell you all about it when we get back. Bye for now, babe. 10 minutes later, I was standing before that same altar again, but this time I had switched places with Russell. I have to admit, I was surprised that my entire family had shown up. I think that was Catherine's doing. She can be very persuasive. What puzzled me was that 8 of my workers were all dressed in identical new suits, which was unusual unless they got a bulk deal, which I doubted. They were sitting at the ends of the pews by the aisles, not with their families. I suspected something was up. As the service ended, all 8 got up and left the church before Dee and I started our procession out. As we walked through the main door, we were confronted by the guys standing in 2 neat lines, long-handled shovels at the shoulder. Someone called out a command, and the shovels first went to the present and then into a line of arches for Dee and me to walk under. "You buggers," I said to them as we stopped under the arches while the photographer took pictures. "We ain't finished yet, Raj," one of them whispered back. I wondered what they had planned next. Then we had the usual photo call. During this, Dee received a large bouquet of flowers. When the photographer finished, and we started towards the waiting limousine, Dee suddenly stopped. "Will you wait here for me a moment, Roger? There's something I need to do now. Please don't move." I watched as Dee walked over to Shirley's grave and placed the bouquet beside the one I had left before the wedding. She stood there alone for a few moments, speaking softly, though no one could hear her. Then she signaled to my girls, who joined her and placed their small bouquets on their mother's grave. Now I realized where the 3 bouquets came from at Estelle's wedding. It was obvious if I had only thought about it. Once Dee rejoined me, we continued towards the limousine only to see it drive away. As we approached, it was replaced by my old Bedford van. The last time I saw it was 3 weeks earlier when the guys decided our yard needed a cleanup. I thought it had gone to the scrapyard. Now it stood there looking better than ever, with bright new paint, ribbons hanging from the ladders on the roof rack, and a liveried chauffeur at the wheel. The boys opened the sliding side door, revealing the back had been fitted with a sofa for Dee and me to sit on. "It's a convertible, boss. If you get impatient, just pull the lever under the arm, and you've got a bed," one of the boys whispered with a smile. With smiles all around, Dee and I climbed inside. The sliding door was locked open for the short drive to the hotel where the reception was held. That night, Dee and I spent our first night together as husband and wife. I woke up at some ungodly hour to the sound of Dee sobbing. "What's wrong, babe?" I asked. What a stupid, inane way to ask her. "Nothing. I'm just so happy, but I'm annoyed with myself for how I behaved towards you. I thought you would wait forever." "Well, we're together forever now, so stop dwelling on the past," I said as I took her in my arms and kissed her. Our past was never mentioned again. The girls started calling Dee Mother very quickly. They only ever called Dee Mother and never Mommy, which they reserved for Shirley. Whose idea that was, I don't know. But Dee often asked the girls how Mummy would do something and then followed suit. Several years passed before that train whistle sounded again. We were all watching a video one evening when the telephone rang. Our eldest answered it. While I paused the video, "Who's calling?" I heard my daughter ask. "Mother, it's for you. Someone called poor Tisha." Dee took the phone from my daughter, pressed the speakerphone button, and set the handset down. "Hi, Tish. How are you keeping?" "Oh, Dee, it's wonderful to hear your voice. I'm in a real state. I caught George running around on me, so I'm getting divorced. I really need to meet up with you for a chat. We could get together like old times." "Well, yes, I suppose I could meet you for lunch." "Hold on a moment while I check my diary," Dee said as she picked up her handbag. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dee was going to reconnect with Portia. Dee saw the astonished look on my face and smiled. "What's the date today?" Dee asked, not directed at anyone in particular. "The 3rd of August, came Portia's voice from the phone. "How about the August 6th, 2026, Dee said. 2026, Dee? That's 20 years away, you must be joking," Portia replied. "No, Tish, I'm quite serious. All our 3 children should be out of the house by then, so I should have time for lunch with you." 3 children. I thought Roger only had 2. No, actually, Roger and I have 2 and a bit at the moment. There's a chance it could be 2 in 2 bits. Twins run in my family. Goodbye, Portia. Call me in about 20 years. With any luck, we'll have changed our phone number by then. Dee switched off the phone and sat back with a silly grin on her face. Our 2 girls were quicker to understand and started to laugh. Suddenly, I realized what Dee had said to Portia. "Twins?" I asked. "Well, that's what the doctor thinks, but it's a little early to be sure yet," Dee replied. "I was hoping to know for sure before I told you and the girls.